All right, my name's Bob Bianchi from the Bianchi Law Group and Bianchi Business Consultants. I'm here with my partner, David Bruno, from the Bianchi Law Group and Bianchi Business Consultants as well. And guys, listen, this is a webinar you have got to watch. Dangers of the dark web, protecting your corporate identity. And I'm going to tell you why. The man, the myth, the legend, Bob Mitchie is here with us today. And he's going to be producing and showing you some things that he was showing us last week. And we were in complete amazement about what it is that he can do. He's our IT specialist, the marketing guy. He's unbelievable. He's from Metro MSPs. You can see on the screen there. And he's going to show you something that's going to really wow you. So, Bob, why don't you take it over, introduce yourself, introduce your guests, and let's go.
Cool. Thanks, Bob. I got Metro MC. You did a great intro for me, so I really don't need to do that. We do cybersecurity services for Northern New Jersey, and with me today, I have a couple members of our team, Will Bishop and Katie Wallace, whose full-time job does nothing but deal with the dark web and look and research and see what's out there. So I am going to move the meeting along and bring Katie and Will online, and the information that they've got is incredible. Everyone is muted, and there'll be a Q&A session at the end. Guys, you're going to want to turn your email off, turn your cell phones off, because the information that Katie and Will are going to share is going to scare you. It scared Bob the other day, and he called me and it's like, you got to talk about this. So with that, Will.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, for that intro, and thanks for the time today. So we do want to talk about today just the fact that, cybercrime is a business. If you don't think that's the case, just turn on your TV, take a look at the news, see what's going on today, and you'll see evidence of it everywhere. And as you can see in the slide there, damages caused can total up to $6 trillion annually. And what we'd like to talk about today is just where are these transactions occurring? Where are the cyber criminals at? Where are they acting? And that's the dark web, an area of the internet that's a little mysterious. It sounds ominous right off the bat. It's dark, right? It's like a dark alley. It's something we need to be afraid of, and there is some concern there with the dark web. But what we'd like to do today is let's transfer some knowledge to you. Let's get some knowledge in your possession, show you what's going on in the space, and once you have that knowledge, you know what's going on. You can rest assured that Metro has some solutions that they can use to keep you secure in the space, and you can go back to your daily business that actually makes money for you. So with that, Bob, if you'll flip the slide over, what I'd like to start with is let's just understand a little bit about what we're talking about here. What is the dark web? I'm out from time to time. I run into people at business functions, and I'll mention what I do. And the question I get a lot is, what is the dark web? I don't really understand what that is. I've seen commercials, but can you explain to me a little bit about what's going on? So let's start there. And if you think about the internet as a whole, I like to think about this picture we're displaying here with the iceberg. You've seen it as an illustration of a lot of different things, but it's actually a perfect illustration of what we want to talk about here today. So the iceberg's the internet. The piece that's sticking up above the water, that's the part we know. That's surface web. This is the part you can pull up whatever your favorite search engine is. We can put in terms. We can pull things up. This is the internet we know and that we use every single day. It's indexed, which is what allows that magic to happen when we go to Google and type in whatever it is we're looking for and get our results back. So that one we know. If we go down below the surface just a little bit, we run into what we call deep web. And deep web's a little different in that it's not indexed. That magic doesn't exist where we can go to our favorite search engine and look for things and then find out what's there. Now, the scale that's represented on our iceberg here is off a little bit because deep web actually represents about 90% of all the content that's available on the internet. And you'll see that there in the verbiage. But, if we wanted to make a list of the types of things that are available in deep web, it would be long. And a lot of things that, come to top of mind would include your bank account information. So, if you want to get to your banking records, you go to a site, you put in a password, you go in and you get access. But somebody can't casually, put in your name and bank account and find that information. So that's an example. Your medical records, and I don't know about you, but when I go to the doctor now, they encourage me to go online and see lab results, notes from my visits, things like that. Your movie queue at Netflix is deep web. You don't want to share that. It's not maybe state secret type material, but it's not information you want to share. So again, lots of different things here that we could list as examples of data we would find in this area, and that's deep web. Now, if we go on down in our illustration there just a little bit, we come to a space that's dark web, and that's what we want to talk about today. So dark web differs a little bit from the other two areas that we've talked about in the way that it functions. So when you come to the dark web, again, this space is not indexed. It also requires some special tools to access. So we need a browser, that's a special browser. We need a VPN connection. So some technical components that we need to put together. Now, it's also important to understand that getting those tools together and that information, we could do that this afternoon if we wanted to. We could sit down and use Surface Web to do a search, gather some information on how to do it, put the parts together at no cost. These tools are available for free, and we could get into the dark web and we could start looking around. Don't recommend that. Don't recommend it for anybody that doesn't know what they're doing, where they're going. There's a lot of bad things that can happen as a consequence of that. But there is some value in understanding the space. So, as I mentioned, there's no indexing. There's anonymity provided. You know, that's the result of using these special tools. Is we don't know who you are. We don't know what you're doing. We don't know where you've been. Those type things. And so that's the nature of the space. And a common question that you'll get about this is, hey, if all the bad things that are happening on the internet are in the dark web, why don't we just turn it off? Why don't we do something to disrupt that? But there are legitimate reasons why it's there. There are legitimate purposes for it. So if you start thinking about people that are in repressed areas of the world, they don't have the ability to express themselves freely. They don't have the ability to get news without it going through some kind of state filter. They can go to the dark web. And, you know, again, we don't know who they are. We don't know what they're doing. So they can get out and they can browse information that's available, look at the news, express opinions, things like that without fear of repercussions. People that are in a whistleblower situation represent another good example of the things that happen down here that are legitimate. You know, they may want to drop information off at a news outlet without, again, fear of repercussions from that. So that and other things, there are other things we could mention down here that are legitimate uses in the space, but given the nature of what's going on in the space, you can imagine that atmosphere is also going to attract some bad actors. And that's what we want to talk about. So if you look at what's going on down here, you'll see all kinds of things in markets that are illegal. So things like selling guns, prescription medications, illegal drugs, human trafficking in an extreme example occurs down here. So all kinds of things that are unsavory and definitely not legal. But the thing that we're concerned about and what brings this home for you as a business owner is this is where the market exists for people that are trafficking in stolen credentials. So your usernames, your email addresses, your passwords that have been exposed in a data breach somewhere, this is where they'll appear once they're for sale. And so knowing that, you can see that there would be some value if we had a way to monitor what's being sold down here, what's being trafficked in regards to those credentials, so that when we have that information, we could put ourselves into a position where we could get reactively proactive. You know, it's occurred, but once we see it go for sale, let's get in the middle of that chain. Let's go do something about it. Let's change passwords. Let's look at maybe strengthening our policies around password security, password practices, things like that. So this is an intelligence type tool that we're talking about here, and you can obviously see where the value would exist. Now, in the next slide, I want to just show you a shot. These are always interesting shots, I think. Bob, if you'll move that along. Thank you, sir. This is a screenshot from the dark web. So one of our developers has pulled this for us and shared it with us. Now, I know that the size of the text there is going to be beyond an eye chart. It's probably not possible to read, but I'll relate to you what's going on here. This is a site where they're selling credit card information, and they're telling you there in the text that they've got all the information. They've read both stripes inside the card, so they know what the card number is. They know what the 4-digit PIN is, PIN code. They know Social Security information, or not Social Security, but rather zip code information, addresses, what the daily cash advance limit is, just everything that's associated with that card. And it's not the case that they're sending you out a spreadsheet that has all this information in it. They're going to stamp the card for you, and they're going to mail the card to you via FedEx in a box that's very inconspicuous. You can get it right at your front door. Your neighbors won't know what's going on. Everything's very clandestine. Now, additionally, in here, they're guaranteeing their product. You'll be satisfied. If you get a card that doesn't work, they'll replace it. If you get a card that doesn't work and you're unhappy, they'll refund your money. So very customer service oriented, and a product that, you know, if you've got the nerve to go through with this, you can see where the attraction is. It's pretty much a printing press from that standpoint. The next slide that I'll share with you is, again, another shot from the dark web. And what I wanted to illustrate with this is, you know, we've got some people here that are selling a large database of just what we were talking about, usernames and credentials, password credentials to go with it. But pay particular attention to the area that we've got marked there with the arrow. It looks very much like a market you would see on Amazon or Etsy or eBay, something like that. They're getting a rating in regards to how well they communicate, what the quality of their product looks like. So you can kind of, as a consumer, you know, maybe you have a little trepidation as you go in here. Who am I dealing with? What are they providing in terms of quality? And will I be able to get in touch with them again? There's a rating system, so you can know exactly what you're getting into as you choose to transact with these people. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Katie and let her talk to you just a little bit about how exactly does your data end up on the dark web in the first place? What's that process look like?
Absolutely. Thank you, Will. As we advance to the next slide here, I'm going to do exactly that. I want to focus on how your data is winding up in this dark web space that Will just went through and explained to us. First, I want to focus on phishing. Phishing attacks are a persistent threat to any business. A staggering 90% of breaches involve phishing. Phishing is an attempt to acquire personal information such as usernames, passwords, or other financial information via impersonation or spoofing through email. Microsoft actually remains the #1 company spoofed in phishing attacks. In one popular email going around, a hacker sends what looks like a legitimate email from Microsoft asking a victim to open a OneDrive or SharePoint file. When the victim then clicks on that link to open the file, they are unfortunately redirected to a fake Office 365 login page, where whatever credentials are imported are then stolen. Hackers then harvest those details and use them either to commit fraud, or they will use the information shared to breach the company's further data, all while posting the information out for sale on the dark web. The next thing I want to discuss is malvertising. Malvertisements may not be a term that you've heard of before, but they look like regular ads. Unfortunately, malvertisements on the internet contain a code that attacks a visitor's system directly or redirects them to a malicious website. Malvertisement campaigns are very attractive to cybercriminals because they can easily be spread amongst a large number of legitimate websites, making the end user think it's okay to click on these ads. You have to think about every time you go on the internet and you Google a new product or a new service, the next website that you visit, you receive different sponsored ads for those particular products or services. Some of those ads could be malvertisements, making you think it's okay, again, to click on those ads. A great example of a malvertisement campaign actually plagued the New York Times. They were hosting a banner ad that attempted to social engineer people into downloading a rogue antivirus tool. The antivirus tool turned out to be a virus itself, and the ad was up live for 24 hours before the New York Times realized the malicious nature of the ad and was able to disable it. The next way that I want to talk about how your credentials are winding up on the dark web are through watering hole styles of attacks. Watering hole attacks are targeted. A watering hole attack consists of a bad actor on the dark web injecting malicious code or a virus into public web pages. Those web pages are often pages in which the target visits the most. This method of injection is not new, and it's commonly used by cybercriminals and hackers amongst popular websites for folks that are in the financial and legal sector. The last thing that I want to talk about are data breaches or web attacks. Web attacks and data breaches are on the rise. It may seem like stories of breaches pop up in the news more frequently nowadays. Just to mention a few companies that have gone through data breaches recently, Capital One, MGM Grand, and Facebook are just a few large name companies who have unfortunately fallen victim to data breaches. A data breach is an incident that exposes confidential or protected information. A data breach might involve the loss of your social security number, banking information, credit card numbers, even email addresses and passwords. Unfortunately, data breaches can be intentional or accidental. A cybercriminal may hack the database of a company where you've shared your personal information, or an employee at your organization may accidentally expose your information on the internet through a phishing attack. Either way, cybercriminals now then have access to your personal details and can profit from them at your expense. Now we know, how our information is winding up on the dark web. I want to move to the next slide and talk about what this all means. Remember hearing about the WannaCry virus a few years back, targeting computers running on the Microsoft operating system by encrypting data and demanding ransomware payments in the form of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency? But unfortunately, many attacks don't have to be as notorious as a WannaCry virus to take an entire company down. When your firm suffers a cyber attack, you may have to temporarily stop operations as you have to address the breach. If the attack involves core infrastructure of your businesses or operations, unfortunately, this can really slow you down, and it will cause a loss in revenue. But unfortunately, there's a bigger problem at hand. From the breach data perspective, think about the amount of valuable data contained just within your Office 365 account, for example. With a set of login credentials, just say your email and password, these bad actors on the dark web or these cyber criminals now have access to almost your entire company's ecosystem. From employees' personally identifiable data to financial information to even your customers' data. Cyber criminals will also use exposed email addresses and passwords to unlock any accounts you've created using that combination. So think about all the logins that you have on the internet, that you use your email address and your password, or your employees have these same logins as well. Anytime you reuse a password amongst multiple of these websites, all you're doing is leaving the door open for a cyber criminal. Because once they gain access to one of your passwords, if you reuse that on any other website, they now have access to that information that lives behind the login. And unfortunately, most of these cyber attacks and data breaches do not have a happy ending. Ransomware and data breaches are a huge security problem for any size company. As we move forward, I want to focus on how your customers are the #1 target. Go ahead and thank you, Bob. Companies, that serve customers, they have the responsibility to keep their data safe, and keeping private information secure is often the expectations and in some cases the law. So if your company goes through a data breach and your customer's personal information is compromised, they feel violated. A simple data breach can put your firm's reputation at stake, causing your clients to turn to other service providers. For small to medium-sized businesses, data breaches can not only bruise your company's reputation, but they can also be financially draining. I know I discussed the downtime that you would be facing, if your company has fallen victim to a breach, but that downtime can be upwards of 7 days, depending on the data that's compromised. Unfortunately, depending on the type of data that your firm holds, you may be slapped with other fines depending on the regulatory acts that you have to be compliant with as well. So with all this downtime and the fines that are faced, data breaches can be very financially draining for any sort of organization. I want to move forward here in the presentation because if you don't have a plan in place to handle data breaches or other cyber attacks, it's never too late to get started. We now offer DarkWeb ID. It's a threat monitoring tool that provides 24/7, 365-day-a-year monitoring for signs that your company's information has been found on the dark web. DarkWeb ID leverages a combination of human and artificial intelligence to scour the dark web for that exposed information. Our system will then report on the exposed email addresses, passwords, or even financial information so it can be dealt with before a larger incident occurs at your organization. The faster that we are able to identify this breach data, the quicker that your company is able to heal, and better your chances are for a long-term business plan. As you can see, the effects of a data breach can be far far more reaching and extremely expensive. It's crucial that your business is fully prepared, in case that a data breach plagues your organization. With that being said, I do want to turn things back over to Bob so he can take things from here.
Cool. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Will. Now I get to share the really bad news with the folks on the call. Last night I took all the people that were registered as of last night. There were 21 people registered, 21 companies registered, and it turns out there's 3,486 credentials available in the dark web right now for the people that were on the call, and we've actually got more than that registered as of now. So we're probably in the 5,000 or 6,000 sets of credentials that are available for people. So that's a scary thing. It's out there. There's nothing we can do to stop it. Like Katie and Will said, things like watering holes. If a website gets compromised that people go to and someone puts something on there, things happen. So what can we really do to protect it right now is, like Katie said, we do have a monitoring service that for basically any company less than 500 people, it's $100 a month, and we can monitor, alert, and notify you exactly when things are happening on the dark web. But like we said on the call, as a thanks for coming out to the call today, we put together a complimentary scan for anyone that's on the call. The website's on the page right now, the click.metromsp.com free dark web scan. If you go there, fill out your name and business email address. We'll do a complimentary scan. You'll actually let you pick up a time. We'll present that to you and get it going. Whoops. We'll get that going. And I think somebody just dropped that. I think somebody dropped that in the chat, or somebody will be dropping that link in the chat for everybody. I'll do it myself. There it is on the chat. So like I said, if you just go to that chat, click on it and register. That being said, there have been a couple questions. If you still have questions, drop them into the Q&A section.
Can I take a host privilege here a moment and ask you a question? You got me thinking here.
You got it.
You remember they're talking about how they'll I'm using layman's terms here, right? Drop this thing in your computer, a virus or other. You have no idea that the thing is even there, and it could be collecting data for up to, I think you were telling me, 100 to 200 days. And I'm thinking of all of us who applied for PPP and the banking information. Do I understand that these bad guys take this data and then go to the dark web, put it out there for sale, and then this way somebody has all of your information, can open up bank accounts, buy houses, all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. When Will's team is going through and finding stuff, they tag all the data records, and the people will, if I can get your name, your address, and all that personal information, I can now do anything and become you. It's really bad. And the part you just mentioned about dropping the drive-by or dropping stuff on your computer, like Katie was saying, when you go to a site and things get installed on your computer, if the bad guys can get one small little piece of code on your PC, and make it a persistent threat, so it just keeps happening, so it just keeps calling home and giving them access. According to the FBI, it's between 100 and 200 days that person has access to the remote PC before you even see a ransomware attack. So during that time, God knows what data you've had on your computer. And like Katie said, if they can intercept a password login for your email, well, now I've got access to every account that you've probably created, and that's why we recommend putting the two-factor authentication in everywhere.
And Bob, can you explain to me, where is this dark web? Is it on servers in countries? Like, how is it that law enforcement can't shut this thing down? Where is it? Is it so convoluted in a computer world that nobody can find these people?
It is spread all over, and it doesn't, like Will had said, you need special software just to get it. It's a layer on top of, or in this case, under the regular internet. It's on these secure private locations that aren't necessarily published until you get the software to get there. And it is so far buried that law enforcement can't get to it. The way law enforcement finds most of these bad guys is social media, because they're sitting in piles of cash and showing off. And like I said, when I was working with the on the Secret Service side, seeing some of the stuff, it was all out of the country. So, you know, where do we go? You know, you can wait for extradition if you can find them, but.
Well, one last, I just have a comment before we get to some other questions, is that cyber insurance, for those of you who may not have it, is obviously not only to do things like this kind of scan and to make sure you're protected, but I know that we have it, and if you don't, I suggest you talk to your insurance agent about that.
Yeah, the other thing on that cyber policy is when you get your cyber policy, there's a whole checklist of things that you have to do, or they ask you if you do them. And if they come back later and say, oh, well, you said that you did daily backups of your data, but you don't, and you get a ransomware attack, they might not pay. So it's always good to go back and audit all those policies to say, are we doing what we said we did?
Yeah, that's a great point. How about Dave Bruno there? Do we have any questions, Dave?
Yes. First question. And I think a lot of the people on this call can relate to this, is that if you have multiple passwords, it's very difficult to even remember them all. I mean, if you have to go to a different site, either you have a list of passwords in front of you, or you're going to be resetting passwords pretty frequently. So, are there some third-party apps or services out there that can help everybody avoid those problems?
That's actually a great question, Dave, because we actually work with a couple different password manager tools, and depending on the company, we evaluate what they are. And people are afraid of password managers. If we pick a reputable one, I'm not going to mention one in the webinar, but if we pick a reputable one and really implement it and make sure that you've got two-factor authentication, and it does help and make things better, because even if the password gets compromised and picked up, it's no good, or it is random if you use the tool correctly. Where, like we were talking this morning, where the tool itself generates the password, and it can be this long because you never have to type it. And when you do that, now you've got unique passwords, and that's the big thing.
Sure. I mean, that's something that I've shifted to myself, and that's why I asked that question. I mean, there's a account out there. You have one master password, and then if you're on the phone or the computer, then it easily generates that very encrypted password that I would never ever remember. But I don't have to remember it because the program does it for me.
Right, and as far as that same password, remember you also enabled two-factor authentication on that, so you have to have something you own to get into it. Right,
and explain what two-factor authentication is, Bob.
Two-factor authentication is it's called multi-factor authentication. So you have to provide multiple pieces of data to get in. Typically, it's something you own and something you know. So could be a password. Something you own could be your cell phone, where you got a new code to put in. So you get the code from the phone, you put it back into the app, and then it lets you in and unlocks it.
Bob Bianchi and I are former prosecutors, and we've worked very closely with law enforcement on a number of different things. And I'll start with wiretaps. Wiretaps are court orders that law enforcement can get to listen in on phone calls. And there's a standard, a very high standard, and I've been a part of those types of applications and monitoring. But in the dark web, are there services out there that could eavesdrop on our phone calls?
Eavesdrop, it depends on your phone calls. Some of the new voice over IP carriers, if I can get, I tested it as a prototype, and I was able to intercept traffic on a local network of complete phone calls. Not only, and it was even better than a wiretap where you got to go through and listen to a whole data stream of calls. Each call was individually separate audio files when I was done of every call that happened out of that office.
And are we talking about like a wireless carrier that most of us use?
No, the stuff I was talking about was actually voice over carriers for an office. On the wireless side, I actually talk about this in the cyber seminars a little more, where where I ask people, I hold up my phone and I say, what really is this? This is a computer. Do you run antivirus you run antivirus on your computer? What are you doing for your phone? Because if I can infect your phone, I can do anything. So, we've always been taught that we should not give out information unless we call them. Like if I call Chase, typically I have no problem with giving out my account information. But if my phone's been compromised and I dialed the 800 number for Chase, how do you know you got Chase?
Good point.
So,
how about these phishing software and plants in emails? I mean, a lot of us get emails where there are embedded links and pictures and offering services. I mean, like the one today, actually. Everybody got a MailChimp, I would imagine, and it says, hey, go to our webinar. But how do people know that those emails that they're getting and the links that they're clicking are not legitimate links?
great question, because it really takes education around what's going on with training people not to click on links unless they're really expecting it. And if they aren't expecting it, that it's a third party link. Really looking at the email for signs that it's not real, because links might, it might be a link that goes to SBA.gov, for example. It might be SBA.com, which obviously isn't where people want to go. So it's an education thing. We also do filtering on malware and virus filtering and bad site filtering on emails as they flow through the system now. So it's an add-on to Office 365 so that we can try and track and stop these links.
These phishing expeditions, are they just happening on email, or are they happening on social media platforms as well?
They're happening everywhere, and like Katie said, there's actually people running ads. Ads are so cheap to run now, and people are getting overloaded with computer screen time. They'll see something pop up. Oh, that's neat. Let me go look at it. And it only takes one click to compromise a machine. I think that was a video that I shared last month on LinkedIn, where someone opened up a Word document and we had full access remotely to the computer. And so if you open a link and it doesn't appear to do anything, you got to get your IT guys involved, because something else might have happened. You might not notice it today, you might not notice it next week, but things could be intercepted. There was actually a comment in the chat that said my PC's running slow. Is that a tip off that I could be compromised? Absolutely. Or it could be you've got an old PC that needed to be upgraded. But if something happens, get the guys involved to check it out. And a lot of people put full faith in their antivirus and their firewalls. Well, that only catches a fraction of what's getting around now, because when people click on something and they say yes to install, or they find a way on the PC to bypass the security, it lets them in. And once that perpetrator has access to your computer, I now have access to your network. Forget about having a firewall. I'm already in. You already opened the door and let me in. So I can, like Bob said, it's 200 days. I could be sitting there reviewing email, setting things up. I worked an issue last year where it was a title agency that was doing a closing. Well, luckily they weren't processing the funds. They weren't processing the funds, but somebody else was, and they did the closing, and the agency got an email late on a Friday afternoon and said, "Oh, the closing was great. Seller would like you to wire the money instead. I'll get rid of the check." So money went out Friday night with no checking. Monday morning, the company called back and said, "Just letting you know, everything went through. We did the wire transfer." And the person said, "What wire transfer?" That money's spent all weekend. So the big time for attacks like that is actually this weekend, because before a holiday weekend, typically people start shutting down. They don't look at accounts through Monday, and it's just sitting there.
Hey, Bob, for those who employ the services of people like yourselves, you had said to me about an instance in which you do some integrity testing to make sure that everyone is following the protocols. And tell us that story about where people were actually forwarding the bad link to other people in the office and how it just spread throughout an entire large office.
Yeah, one of the great phishing attempts for people is I think you're talking about the breach demo that we did. We send out a fake email to a business to see how see if their employees really have responded to the training that we've done, and really as to test them. So we send it out, and it tries to open up a Word document, and the Word document actually pops up and says invalid version of Word. When it does that, it actually triggered the virus. So what happened in this office was, well, Susie couldn't open it, so she sent it to the person next to her. Hey, Sally, can you open this? She sends it over. Now we got two breaches. Oh, it doesn't work here either. So it's really crazy that that people will share that stuff, and it can just propagate. Now with people working at home, it might there's even more issues going on, because the people at home don't have the minimal support that we have from having corporate firewalls and antivirus. In some cases, they're running on their home PC with who knows what version of Windows, who knows what version of Office. They're old versions. There's known problems, and every Tuesday, Microsoft releases patches and tells the world what's wrong. And if you don't patch your stuff, you've now opened the door.
Yeah, and the antivirus programs themselves need updates. So if you're not set on auto update, that could sit in your computer vulnerable until you come to terms with that update, correct?
Correct. And Dave, if the bad guys get access to your computer, they've already tested their malware with all the known antivirus, and one of the first things they're going to do, they're going to turn it off. Scary.
All scary stuff. So I want to send it to Will, then Katie, and then Bob. And I want one takeaway, one thing that you could recommend that the people on this call could do when they end this call to try to protect themselves.
Yeah, I'll go first. Since on my screen I see myself in order first there, and I would say pay attention. That's the big thing. You know, CDC recommends you wash your hands right now for 20 seconds. We're paying attention to that. It's kind of a good parallel with your email. There's a huge rise in the number of phishing and spam emails that are going on that are related around COVID-19. You know, the bad actors take advantage of every situation. So global pandemic, they've jumped on that too. You see a lot of things coming in that are COVID-19 related. So just like the hand washing example, take 20 seconds and pay attention to your email. You know, does it look right? Are you expecting it? Much like Bob said, if there's a link in there that asks you to take action, were you expecting that email? So that would be my answer, is get some education around what to look for and then pay attention.
Very nice. Katie?
Absolutely. My takeaway would be circling back around passwords. If you don't utilize a password manager, try to pick strong passwords. They say to use phrases or song lyrics that might be easy for you to remember, and start utilizing those amongst your accounts as a way to keep your private information secure, especially if you're creating an account where you know you're going to house credit card information or where you're going to have to put in your social security number. Make sure that you're picking unique passwords for those accounts. That way, at the end of the day, if a site is breached, you know, you're not reusing a password and you're not leaving that door open for the cyber criminals.
Makes sense. Bob Mitchie.
Big thing is training. You know, train the employees to look at what they're doing, but also test them. Have your IT guys send out the phishing emails and really know what's going on. If you're on a corporate environment, we can also talk about some new detection software to find stuff that the antivirus misses.
All good things for everybody to think of.
Okay, guys, you were amazing. Metro, Bob, you've been awesome with us and always appreciate it. Can they follow you anywhere on social media?
Sure. I am active on LinkedIn and Facebook. Everyone is on Facebook right now. So it's Metro MSP on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Bob Mitchie on both of those platforms.
Okay, and you can always find us at the Bianchi Law Group on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn as well. Guys, it's a tremendous service. Thank you so much. For all of those who attended, thank you for staying on. It was a great honor to have you. We're going to be doing more webinars, so stick with us if you see something coming down the line, or if you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like us to cover, let us know. We hope you guys have a very safe week, and everybody in your families hopefully is well. Blessings to you all. Thank you.
Take care.